Hey, Brian Falchuk here on Instagram, on that camera, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. On this one, I'm going to be going back and forth. I feel like I should just stop explaining that because it happens regularly. You're just trying a new setup, but the cameras are a little more spread apart than usual. But you notice I didn't start saying that with an apology. So I didn't open up having to explain what I was doing and why I was doing it and why the eye contact may not be great or shifting a lot by apologizing. That's kind of on purpose because that's what this post or this live is about, is something I talked about in a live that I did, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago. But now the article that I was working on is out as of today. And it's on something that I call, you ready for this? Intropologizing. It's an introduction apology, or an apology as an introduction. It's how you open a conversation, a phone call, an email, an in-person conversation, an impromptu conversation, by apologizing. It's like the first thing out of your mouth is "I'm sorry." And for some people, I've shared a humorous one where my father used to call early in the mornings on Saturdays or Sundays. He'd call my brother, who's at the time maybe like early 20s, I don't know. Not the kind of person you would expect to be waking up early on the weekend because he's probably out late the night before. And my father would always start the call with, "Oh, you're awake." Like he was surprised my brother was awake. And I was always like, if you're surprised he's awake, why did you call? Right? Like, if you weren't expecting him to be awake, you shouldn't have called then. So what I talked about in the article is someone who worked for me who would start every phone call we had. I mean, everyone, whether it was just like off the cuff, she called me, or we had a scheduled, like you're going to call me at this time for our catch up or something. Or I asked her to call me. She'd start with "I'm sorry," as if she was catching me in a bad moment. Every phone call started with, "Oh, I'm sorry." And then she'd launch into what she needed to say. And she didn't just do it with me, she did it with lots of people. In fact, pretty much everybody. It was her way of saying hi. And we talked about it because she started to get feedback about it. And her take was, "Oh, that's me being polite. That's me accepting responsibility." Or if the person's upset about whatever, then maybe if I start with an apology, it's kind of like, "Look, we don't need to argue about who's at fault, or it's on me, I'll fix it." I really love her intention, but the problem is what it was doing is setting up this idea of her as kind of a failure, as someone who always has something to apologize about, right? There's always a problem, and it's kind of always her fault. And it would be reflected in the 360 feedback that she would get. It would be reflected in the comments that I would get about her as a manager. And the thing is, actually, she's pretty good as a manager. She did a good job with the function. She's a good people leader. And people noted that, but they'd always call out this sense of like everything going wrong all the time and always needing to clean up messes. And that actually wasn't really the truth. It was just the perception she was building. There was always a problem, and she always needed to apologize for it, even if she really didn't. And I found that so interesting. So we talked about it, and we did a few things to really cut that behavior and change the perceptions of her, because those perceptions are people's reality when they think of you. And that means it affects your career trajectory. It affects the interpretations of you. It affects your future. So I talk about that in this article, and I went over a lot of what I just said when I did a live about this a few weeks ago. But in the article, I go into a little more depth, and I also talk about what we did specifically to overcome the problem. So you have to go to brianfalchuk.com/blog and check out the article and find out, well, what did we do? What was the outcome? And take that advice back for yourself. Look at whether you're doing this too. Look at whether maybe someone who works for you or is a friend of yours or someone you care about is doing it. What might the impact be on them? And what can you do to help them or help yourself, because you may be the one doing it, to change those perceptions? This perception is reality, and that reality dictates the opportunities that you will have. So think about it. Intropologizing. Is it something you do? Is this something you can change? Hopefully this helps. brianfalchuk.com/blog. It's the first article there. And if you're checking this out a little bit later, maybe you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn and seeing the video later, if it's not right at the top, just search for the word apology or apologize, and it'll come right up. Really easy to find. So brianfalchuk.com/blog. Thanks, everybody. Today is a new day. Go out and do it. All right.